Your soulmate had a heated argument with their sister because of you. She shocked everyone by saying, "You are a..." My beloved, before you continue, take a deep breath. There are moments in life when something changes behind the scenes long before you ever see the evidence in front of you. A conversation happens when you are not present. A name is mentioned in a room you have never entered. Someone who thought they understood the entire situation suddenly discovers that they were wrong. And sometimes, the person who has been trying to keep everything under control finally reaches a point where they can no longer remain silent. That is where this story begins. Not with a message. Not with a phone call. Not with a dramatic reunion. It begins inside a family conversation. Your name comes up. At first, it is casual. Someone asks a question. Someone makes a comment. Someone remembers something. And then your soulmate's sister says something that changes the entire atmosphere. She has been watching. She has been listening. She has noticed things that other people ignored. She noticed the change in your soulmate's behavior whenever your name appeared on a phone screen. She noticed the silence after certain conversations. She noticed the way your soulmate would become distant whenever the family criticized you. She noticed how quickly they defended you, even when they pretended not to care. And perhaps most importantly, she noticed something your soulmate desperately wanted to hide. They still care. More than they admit. More than they planned. More than they wanted anyone in their family to know. For a long time, your soulmate may have tried to convince everyone that the situation was finished. They may have said, "It doesn't matter anymore." They may have said, "I'm moving on." They may have laughed when someone mentioned you. They may have changed the subject. They may have acted as though your presence in their life was nothing more than an old chapter. But people who live close to someone learn their patterns. And their sister knew. She knew that the words did not match the behavior. She knew that there was unfinished emotion hiding beneath the surface. So when your name came up again, she challenged them. At first, your soulmate tried to dismiss it. "Why are we talking about this?" But their sister didn't stop. She asked a simple question. "If you don't care, why does everything about you change whenever their name is mentioned?" Silence. That question landed harder than anyone expected. Your soulmate looked away. Someone else in the room became uncomfortable. But the sister continued. "You keep saying you don't care. Then why are you still defending them?" That was when the argument began. Not because your soulmate hated you. Not because the sister wanted to attack you. The argument happened because both of them were looking at the same truth from different directions. Your soulmate wanted privacy. Their sister wanted honesty. And when those two desires collided, emotions exploded. Your soulmate became defensive. "You don't understand what happened." The sister answered, "Then explain it." "I don't have to explain anything." "Yes, you do." "No, I don't." "You keep pretending that you're over this person." "I am." "No, you're not." Those words created a silence that felt heavier than shouting. Your soulmate stared at her. She stared back. And then she said something nobody expected. You are still in love with them. Your soulmate immediately rejected it. No. But the sister didn't believe the denial. She stepped closer and said, "Then why are you angry every time someone says something against them?" Your soulmate had no answer. Because sometimes anger is not the opposite of love. Sometimes anger is what remains when love has been wounded and never properly understood. Sometimes people become furious because they are trying desperately not to feel something. And your soulmate had been doing exactly that. They had been fighting their own emotions. They had been fighting memories. They had been fighting regret. They had been fighting the fear that maybe they had made the wrong decision. And now their sister was forcing those hidden feelings into the open. The conversation became louder. Your soulmate said that the family didn't know the entire story. Their sister replied that nobody could know the entire story because your soulmate refused to tell the truth. Then came the sentence that shocked everyone. She looked directly at your soulmate and said, "You are a fool if you lose someone like that just because you are too proud to admit what they mean to you." Nobody spoke. Your soulmate looked stunned. Because that wasn't the sentence they expected. They expected criticism. They expected judgment. They expected their sister to tell them to forget you. Instead, she defended you. And she wasn't finished. She said, "You keep telling everyone that this person is the problem. But every time I see you alone, you are the one suffering." Your soulmate became emotional. They tried to walk away. But their sister followed. "Don't run from this conversation. Leave me alone." "No. I'm not leaving you alone this time." Your soulmate stopped. Their sister's voice softened. "I have watched you change since this person came into your life." That sentence carried years of observation. You became more hopeful. You started talking about the future. You smiled differently. You cared about things you never cared about before. And then something happened. You became afraid. Your soulmate looked down. Because fear was the truth. Not hatred. Not indifference. Fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of being rejected. Fear of being vulnerable. Fear that you might not feel the same way. Fear that their family might never accept the relationship. Fear that they would have to choose between what everyone expected from them and what their heart actually wanted. And eventually, fear became distance. Distance became misunderstanding. Misunderstanding became silence. And silence became pain. But the connection never completely disappeared. That is what their sister understood. She knew that some relationships don't end simply because two people stop talking. Sometimes the conversation ends while the feelings remain. Sometimes the relationship disappears from daily life but continues living inside memory. Sometimes someone says, "I'm done," while secretly hoping the other person will give them one more reason to stay. Your soulmate may have been caught in exactly that contradiction. One part of them wanted to move forward. Another part kept looking backward. And their sister saw it. She saw the conflict. She saw the hesitation. She saw the regret. Then she asked, "What are you actually afraid of?" Your soulmate didn't answer. Again she asked. What are you afraid will happen if you admit that you still love them? That question broke something open. Your soulmate finally said. Because what if they don't want me anymore? There it was. The truth. Not pride. Not anger. Not indifference. Fear of rejection. The sister became quiet. Then she said. Then at least you'll know. Your soulmate shook their head. You don't understand. I understand more than you think. No. You don't. I understand that you're hurting yourself because you're waiting for certainty before you take a risk. Your soulmate wiped away emotion. The sister continued. Love doesn't always come with guarantees. You don't get to know the ending before you begin. You don't get to demand proof that someone will stay before you show them that you want them to. You can't keep punishing yourself because you're scared. Your soulmate remained silent. Then came the sentence that changed the entire argument. Their sister said. You are not protecting yourself. You are protecting your ego. That sentence hit deeply. Because sometimes people confuse emotional walls with strength. They think refusing to apologize makes them powerful. They think staying silent makes them mysterious. They think pretending not to care prevents pain. But silence doesn't eliminate feelings. It only hides them. And eventually, hidden emotions become heavier. Your soulmate knew this. They had been carrying that weight. Every memory had become another reminder. Every familiar place brought something back. Every song reminded them of a moment. Every notification created a tiny hope. Every night brought the same questions. Did I make a mistake? Do they still think about me? Did I ruin everything? Could I have handled things differently? What would happen if I called? And perhaps the most painful question. What if they have already moved on? Their sister could see the answers written all over their face. She told them. If you really don't want this person, let them go peacefully. But if you still love them, stop pretending. Your soulmate finally asked. What would you do? The sister answered. I would tell the truth. Simple. Direct. Uncomfortable. But truthful. And then she said. Because someday you might wake up and discover that the person you were too afraid to choose has finally chosen someone else. That possibility terrified your soulmate. For the first time, they imagined you genuinely moving forward without them. Not waiting. Not wondering. Not hoping. Just living. Meeting someone else. Smiling again. Building a future. And suddenly, the idea of losing you permanently felt different. It wasn't romantic anymore. It was real. They realized that waiting forever was also a decision. Silence was a decision. Distance was a decision. Pride was a decision. And every decision had consequences. Their sister looked at them and said, You keep saying you don't want to lose them. Then stop acting like losing them is acceptable. Those words remained in your soulmate's mind long after the argument ended. That night, they couldn't sleep. They replayed the conversation again and again. They remembered your face, your voice, your patience, your arguments, your laughter, your moments of silence. The things they said that they wished they could take back. The moments when you needed reassurance and they gave you distance. The moments when you asked for honesty and they gave you excuses. The moments when you wanted clarity and they gave you confusion. And now they finally understood something. You weren't asking for perfection. You were asking for truth. You wanted to know where you stood. You wanted to know whether their feelings were real. You wanted to know whether you were worth fighting for. And maybe they were too afraid to answer. Not because they didn't know, but because they knew exactly what the answer was. They loved you. That was the problem. They loved you enough to be afraid. They loved you enough to become vulnerable. They loved you enough to imagine a future. And they loved you enough to fear losing you. Their sister's words had forced them to confront the contradiction. They could continue pretending. Or they could finally become honest. And somewhere in the middle of that night, they picked up their phone. They opened your conversation. They stared at your name. Their fingers hovered over the keyboard. They typed. "Can we talk?" They deleted it. They typed. "I've been thinking about you." Deleted. They typed. "I'm sorry." Deleted. They typed. "I need to tell you the truth." Deleted. They put the phone down. Picked it up again. And finally realized something. There was no perfect message. There was only an honest one. So they began again. This time, they didn't try to sound strong. They didn't try to sound distant. They didn't try to manipulate the situation. They simply wrote what they had been afraid to say. "I miss you." They stared at those words. For a long time. Then they added, "I don't know if I still have the right to say that." Their eyes filled with emotion. Because this wasn't about winning anymore. It was about admitting the truth. Their sister had changed something that night. She had reminded your soulmate that love cannot survive forever on assumptions. Someone has to speak. Someone has to take the first step. Someone has to be brave enough to say, "I was wrong. I was scared. I miss you. I still care. I don't want to lose you." And perhaps that is the real meaning behind the argument. It wasn't simply a family disagreement. It was a confrontation with reality. Your soulmate had been hiding behind explanations. Their sister removed those explanations. She made them look at what they had been avoiding. And the sentence that shocked everyone wasn't merely, "You are still in love with them." It was what came afterward. "You are the one who pushed them away." Your soulmate froze. Because deep inside, they knew it was true. Maybe circumstances played a role. Maybe misunderstandings played a role. Maybe other people influenced decisions. Maybe timing was terrible. Maybe both of you made mistakes. But they knew there were moments when they could have chosen differently. They could have communicated. They could have apologized. They could have defended you. They could have explained themselves. They could have stayed. Instead, they withdrew. And now they were facing the consequences. Their sister didn't say this to hurt them. She said it because she cared. Sometimes the people who love us most are the ones willing to tell us what we don't want to hear. And she knew that your soulmate needed truth more than comfort. She said, "If you love this person, stop making them pay for your fear." That sentence stayed with them. They thought about all the times you might have felt unwanted. All the times you questioned whether you mattered. All the nights you may have wondered why someone who claimed to care could behave as though you were disposable. Your soulmate realized something painful. You may have been asking yourself the same questions they were asking themselves. Do they still care? Do they miss me? Was any of it real? Why did they walk away? Two people. Two hearts. Two sets of questions. And perhaps the tragedy was that both were waiting for the other to speak first. But now something had changed. The family knew. The sister knew. Your soulmate knew. And once a truth is spoken aloud, it becomes difficult to hide from it again. The next morning, your soulmate woke up with a strange feeling. Not certainty. Not peace. Courage. Small courage. Fragile courage. But enough to consider taking one step. They thought about contacting you. They thought about asking to meet. They thought about explaining everything. They knew you might be angry. You might reject them. You might have moved on. You might not trust them anymore. But they finally understood that uncertainty was better than lifelong regret. Their sister had given them one final piece of advice. If you want them, don't make them guess. And that sentence became their new reality. They didn't know what would happen next. But for the first time, they were willing to find out. Because sometimes love doesn't disappear. Sometimes it gets buried under fear. Under pride. Under family opinions. Under misunderstandings. Under bad timing. Under words that were never spoken. But buried does not mean dead. And perhaps your soulmate is finally beginning to uncover what they buried. The truth. The truth about you. The truth about themselves. And the truth about what they still feel. Their sister's argument may have seemed like chaos. But perhaps it became the moment when everything finally became clear. She didn't just defend you. She defended the possibility that your soulmate could stop running from their own heart. She reminded them that love requires courage. And she reminded them that sometimes the biggest mistake isn't loving someone. The biggest mistake is allowing fear to convince you that you shouldn't. So if your soulmate is thinking about you tonight, perhaps they are remembering every moment they tried to forget. Perhaps they are realizing why your name still carries weight. Perhaps they are finally understanding why they never felt completely free after walking away. Perhaps they are asking themselves whether there is still a door open. And perhaps their sister's final words are still echoing in their mind. You are not confused about them. You are afraid of what admitting your feelings will require from you. You already know. You just haven't been brave enough to say it. And now your soulmate has a choice. Continue pretending. Or become honest. Continue hiding. Or speak. Continue protecting pride. Or protect something more valuable. The connection. The possibility. The future. And if they choose courage, the next chapter will not begin with a perfect confession. It may begin with a simple message. A hesitant call. An apology. A conversation. Maybe even a sentence as small as, "Can we start again?" But sometimes the smallest sentence carries the weight of an entire heart. And sometimes the person who was afraid to say, "I love you," finally discovers that silence was costing them more than honesty ever could. So remember this. You don't need to chase someone to prove your worth. You don't need to beg someone to recognize your value. You don't need to force a relationship into existence. If someone truly wants to return, their actions must eventually speak. Let them take responsibility. Let them communicate. Let them explain. Let them show consistency. Because love is not simply a feeling someone claims to have. Love is behavior. Love is accountability. Love is courage. Love is choosing honesty when dishonesty would be easier. And perhaps that is what your soulmate is learning now. Their sister didn't merely expose their feelings. She exposed the gap between what they said and what they actually felt. And everyone who heard the argument may never look at your soulmate the same way again. Because the secret isn't really a secret anymore. They care. They miss you. They are afraid. And beneath all the defensiveness, there is a heart that never completely stopped hoping. The question is no longer whether they have feelings. The question is whether they will have the courage to act responsibly on those feelings. That part belongs to them. And your part is to remember who you are. You are not someone who needs to convince another person to love you. You are not someone who should accept endless confusion. You are not someone who should have to decode silence forever. If they come back, let them come back with honesty. Let them come back with accountability. Let them come back prepared to communicate. Let them come back ready to understand the pain they caused. And if they do, perhaps that heated family argument will eventually be remembered as the night everything changed. The night your soulmate was finally forced to stop pretending. The night their sister looked them in the eyes and said what everyone else was afraid to say. You are still in love with them. And perhaps, after all the denial, your soulmate finally whispered. Yes. Not because someone forced them. Not because they were lonely. Not because they wanted attention. But because the truth had become impossible to ignore. And sometimes the most powerful love story isn't the one where two people never separate. It's the one where two people become honest after separation. Where mistakes become lessons. Where pride becomes humility. Where fear becomes courage. Where silence finally becomes conversation. And where two people stop asking, who will make the first move? And start asking, what would happen if we finally told each other the truth? That is where this story truly begins.